Right, so last year I did a load of videos with Dr. Paddy Mallon, who's head of infectious diseases in Vincent's and a lecturer in UCD. And you guys have been hounding me to do an update with him, which I didn't really want to do because I didn't want to be the messenger of bad news again. And then Paddy asked me to do a video with him as well because there's certain messaging he wants to put out there, which isn't rocket science stuff, but is very important. There's also a little positive slant to certain aspects of it as well, but it's very important. Hence, I had a chat with Paddy. This is that chat. Be safe, take care of each other.
Too long, Paddy.
Far too long, Doug.
I much prefer sitting by a pool with you than dude. This is our new way of communicating, though. Seemingly.
Who would have thought this time last year?
I know, man.
You know,
it's
been a long time.
It's been a long time. I've been hounded by people to have a chat with you, and I thought, well, I better catch up with you. So. I suppose the first thing that strikes me is what is the main difference between now and, say, the first time we chatted, which was March 2020? What is the difference in this lockdown to that one, or is there?
It's about the timelines, Baz. If you remember when we sat down having that coffee, I think it was a Friday. And I went back up to the hospital we were reconfiguring how we were working at the hospital, expecting a wave of patients to come in over that weekend and the next week. And it was at a time when we knew that there was a lot of COVID circulating in the community, but we knew that it was going to translate into these cases. And on the back of that, on the back of that video and the public health messaging getting out at that time, we crushed the numbers right down, and it pretty much prevented that wave of hospitalizations happening. Now, you still ended up with over 1,000 people dying in the first wave, and we still ended up with a lot of hospitalizations, but everyone that needed an ICU bed got an ICU bed. The hospitals were able to cope, and the reason they were able to cope was because we got the numbers slashed. We crushed that curve, if you remember. This time around, it's different because we're speaking now, and rather than having no patients in hospital, we've got 4 wards full of patients with COVID. Our ICU is filling up with patients with COVID, and every day there's actually thousands of new cases still being reported.
Is the demographic of people coming in, is it still the kind of, the much more vulnerable age groups, or is there younger people? Is a lot more younger people coming in now?
Yeah, the big difference this time around is it's younger people. Like, I think a lot of older people have really protected themselves very well. It's not like there's no older people. We're not seeing really elderly people coming in to the same extent.
Really?
The people that we're seeing, the people that are coming into hospital are sort of within that probably sort of 40 to 70 bracket.
And sick, and they're sick, Paddy. They're sick.
Sick.
I noticed this kind of fluctuation a little bit, right, in the figures. Are they going down, or is that just a very flippant kind of messaging at the moment?
Well, they talk about stabilisation of figures, but stabilisation is no use to me. If you're stabilising at 5,000-6,000 cases per day, that's going to translate into large numbers of people coming into ED for the foreseeable, for at least the next 10 days to 2 weeks, when we're already under pressure. What we need to do is not to see a stabilization of figures. We need to see the figures diving right down, getting them really down under control the way that we did in March. And it's that sort of group effort that's needed at the minute. It's the only thing that's going to have an impact at the minute.
Because we've been through this before, is there anything we should be doing differently or to what we did before, or what should we be doing?
Everything you do that involves an inconvenience, but it's natural that the more you do it, the more tired people get. And we got really magic and massive buy-in to people doing physical distancing and washing their hands and staying at home back in March, and like the vast majority of people in the country were really taking part in it. This time around, it's going to be harder because everyone's a bit fatigued and everyone's a bit sort of tired of the message. It doesn't mean that the message loses any of its importance. And the other big difference, Baz, is last time around, if you remember back in March, this was very much started off very much as a sort of Dublin-centric problem.
Yeah.
It really was Dublin and the main urban centres, and it wasn't really affecting. There were large parts of the country during the first wave that had very little impact from COVID, and people didn't really see the impact day to day. Their neighbours weren't getting sick. That's completely different. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere now, and that just means that everyone. This isn't a problem that Dublin is going to be able to solve or Cork's going to be able to solve. It's a problem everyone in the country needs to be looking at this and needs to be getting on board with it if we're going to turn it around, and we need to turn it around really quickly.
What's the vibe like with you guys where you are? Like, what does that feel like from your angle? Because I know a nurse separate to you, and she had said to me, if this happens again, if there's another breakout, I don't think I could handle it mentally.
People are keeping their heads up. There's a lot of high spirits out there. Certainly the vaccine being brought in has helped because it the fact that we're seeing each other getting vaccinated and getting protected takes one element of the worry out of it, because it used to be that you were sitting looking at patients coming in and you were saying, how am I going to deal with all of this? We're all rapidly going back into where we were back in March with this lockdown and the homeschooling and all of that inconvenience, and we all know how frustrating it is. And you end up, you're right, you have to pick yourself up and go, I have to do all this all over again. But the key to this, Baz, is that the better we are at a community as a collective in Ireland at getting control of this at the community level, the shorter this period of inconvenience is going to be. And there's no other way around it. I wish there was, but this is completely within our control. But it's only within our control if we act as a collective and we act as a country to get back to those basics and crush the curve the way that we crushed the curve back in March. There's no shortcut to this. The vaccine isn't going to be the answer to what's going on at the minute. And there's no other way around it. We just need to get serious, and we need to get serious with the virus as a collective, crush the numbers, and then the kids will get back at school and we can hopefully seeing an impact of the vaccination.
You got vaccinated, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you're like the kid with the new PS5 now. I'm like, Paddy got vaccinated, and how's the chip working in you? You're not running down to buy Microsoft Xbox or anything like that. No, it's all.
No, the kids are still beating me in every video that I try to play, so I'm no better at it.
But tell me this:
no,
what can people expect with the vaccination? Because a lot of people have, there was all this talk that's too slow, and what happens, and it needs a second one. And so, will you tell me your angle of that?
So there's a few things that we need a bit of reality check in terms of the vaccine. The vaccine, it's designed to stop people getting sick with COVID. So we don't know that it actually stops the transmission of the infection. Okay, but the key is if we can get enough people vaccinated, and especially the groups of people that we know get sick with COVID, if we can get those vaccinated, then we can expect to see a big drop off in sickness from the infection, and hopefully a big drop off in hospitalizations and a big drop off in deaths. So that's really the first focus of the vaccination programs. And it's for that reason that they've made this list of priority groups. They've focused on healthcare workers first, and the reason they focus on healthcare workers is it's standard practice in a pandemic that you protect the people on the front line, because if you don't have healthcare workers, you have no treatment. Then they're focusing on those within residential care homes, the older, elderly, and more vulnerable within that, because during the first wave we saw big problems and a lot of sickness, hospitalizations, and death. And then they're going to work down the list, so working from older people, working with particular vulnerable groups. It's a supply and demand. At the moment, we get a certain supply of vaccines every week. Those vaccines are allocated and they're administered. But it means that the broad population isn't going to be vaccinated within the next few weeks, probably not within the next few months as we work our way through these categories. So people need to be patient. Now things could change very quickly because the number of people that we can vaccinate is dependent on the number of vaccines that we get per week. At the minute, we're getting a supply from two different vaccine providers. One's called Pfizer and one's called Moderna. The data on these vaccines is excellent. I think they're world class. And we're using all of those. But as more vaccines come online, there's a third supplier called AstraZeneca, which may come online within the next few weeks. What you'll see as more of these come online is that the number of vaccines that are available every week will increase, will go up and up and up every week. And as it goes up and up and up every week, then the speed of the vaccine program will increase dramatically. And that's really when you'll start to see the numbers of people vaccinated increase dramatically and more of the general population getting vaccinated.
When do you think we'd be like 80% vaccinated? Do you think that's something we would have within, I don't know.
At the minute, the issue is with supply of vaccines. As more vaccines come on board, it'll be less about the supply of vaccines and it'll be more about our ability to vaccinate. And certainly with the AstraZeneca vaccine, for example, it can be stored at room temperature. It's the sort of thing that GPs and community pharmacists
and you can just bang that out once it's there.
Yeah, and these guys are well used to doing that. So, and that could happen relatively quickly.
When people talk about it, it's that confusion of it's actually been slow getting it out, but it's not that. It's that we don't have the supply to put it out the way we want to, is it,
The vaccines that we have are excellent, but we've got a limited supply of them, and they're technically very difficult to administer. But that all gets simpler as more of these vaccines come on board, because the latter vaccines that have been developed are much easier to administer. So it means that the logistics are much easier, and that means that the number of people that you can vaccinate at any one time increases dramatically. Once you can push it out in the GP surgeries and the community pharmacies, it's completely changed.
And the vaccine is still the same with the new strand and everything like that. We're not going to.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
But the thing is that viruses evolve, and they'll evolve to escape things that you try and put in place. The more we let this virus replicate in large levels in the community, then we're just creating we're giving it a chance to evolve.
What's pissing you off the most at the moment? What's frustrating you the most?
Here's the deal, right? So many people in society are doing what they can, but there's a small number of people, a small proportion of people in society who are trying to find ways to say, what can I do? And they're just doing enough at the minute to keep the transmissions going. So we're probably 70% of the way there, but we probably need to be 90% of the way there to get on top of this. And the most frustrating thing maybe is just that some people maybe still don't have the mindset about, maybe it's not about how serious this is, but just about what the solution needs to be. Everybody needs to be part of the solution, because if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. It's those sort of onward impact that we need to think about, because that's the way this virus behaves. And it doesn't care, but we need to care. It's not going to take too much more, but it just takes a little bit more effort from everybody to get on board with it for the next few weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, a perfect storm is going to require a perfect approach, and we know we can do it.
Paddy, you're the man. You're the man. Listen, look, thanks a million. I know there was I know it's a tough time for you guys in there as well, and you're a legend. So thanks a million.